Oh yeah, ngã trâu de lê gen là.
You know, I told the lesser.
Oh yeah. Oh, that also, yeah. Oh, that's,
Good morning, Katrina. Nice to hear you loud and
Good
clear.
morning.
Dita Kaledo.
Karshab Devunde.
Nah,
What the Devunde?
yes. No, that is. 不学这啥，不学现在泰国的，或者什么的，大概就是。那。Yeah.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche, Tashi Dele. And good morning, Katrina. Thank you for translating for us, and welcome to anyone online. As usual, we'll begin with some prayers, and you'll find those, or motivations, and you'll find the link for those in the chat box.
To the teacher and dad, prince and destroyer, one less gone, for destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and new conduct, one gone to bliss, no other world, supreme guide, beings to attain. Teacher of gods and humans, you, the Buddha and Tao, prince and the destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. And I was supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced seven strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, and I bow. With pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the three worlds, winner the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, three worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to Tathagata I bow. True purity, freeing from attachment, true virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame on a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, condition things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the false, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam guruna mandalakam niriyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am Dharma. I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
뭐야? 리사.
Disong Genla.
뭐야? 되네. 대한 개세 전부 시발래 손래 주주래라. 뭐야? 개와 신의 주신 신도 내사. 개와 신의 주신 신도 내 레부진의 세벌 교관이스. 장주 섬기 주신 딱 말이야. 레부진배 미세 배워를 요르스. she송바타라. 아니 개와 신의 주신 신도. 장주기 섬기 sembal에 셴배. 개와 말아주 개와 사회 침바추든 서발라 소바 개와 사회 te주시오라. 장주 sem바진게 가사도. 개와 신의 장주기 섬기 sembal에 셴배. 개와 신다. 침발라 소바 말아주 개와 te주시오라. 개와 주신신의 개래 동부팀바. 주신신도네. 개와 신의 주신은 레부진의 세버지와. 레부 렌지 톱거리 빼나 침바다네 개와 침마 로주주고는 로주 렌지 조라니 침바티 네버 소사다 고양자 용에 개와 말아. 개와 신의 주신신의 레부진의 세버지와니 세사르스다 레부 용에 요 말에. 동부코랑 감도라. 개와 신의 주신도네 레부진의 세버지와니. 장주 sembi sembe 개와도 세우라. 다 semje 탐제 같은 산제제 고반 토벌 자섬. 얼레 땅부터 질랍샤나. 땅마트 질랍샤나.
So here, as the great Bodhisattva, Shantideva has stated in his guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, all other virtues, like the plantain tree, produce their fruit, but then their force is spent. Alone, the marvelous tree of bodhicitta constantly bears fruit and grows unceasingly. So all other virtues, referring to, like as it says here in this, all other virtues that are not held with bodhicitta. So those of us who lack that kind of mind, we engage in virtues. We do generosity and ethical conduct and patience and so forth. But like the plantain tree or like the banana tree, when it has borne its fruit, it no longer is going to produce. And so too, an act of generosity that we may have engaged in, it might bring us the result of wealth in a future life, but then its force is exhausted. Having given that good result, it's not going to bring anything more. And this is as opposed to the virtues that we do that are held with that attitude of bodhicitta.
오야. 장주 sembi 주신 딱발이 하서도. 장주 sem께네. semje 탐제 같은 산제제 고반 토벌자. 대체동에 진보당에 개와도 telang오이 섬 산제동 고반 토베체도 섬제 탐제게 등 주통게 산제제 고반 토베체도 뭐바인 섬 telapa 뭐 샤나스고라 자주고 섬지 심베께서데 네 산제제 고반 토베체도 뭐고요라 어디인데 교사체 누구죠 대부진에 세버죠 자주 섬지 준신데 자주고 섬지 심베 개와데 아니 가스가스는 대부진 세부진의 세버지와니 자주 sembi 주신 딱발이 하세라 대부진배 미세 페어는 요새 자주고 sembi 개와데 맞아 박삼기 신이스 때 가서라 40페이지 단데 여기 봐 박삼기 신이세 박삼기 신인데 에네코 마마이다 파다 투저야 뭐야 깨되게 지시기도 다들 제부터 빼 따바를 쉬어서로 안 제부터 전달 다들 라달라마이 저바시시다 대대 전주기 심비 심베 개와데 빠삼기 신기 대부신도 세거라 Geshe Shanju Simbi Chushin Takbaran, Jebu Jimbe Mesepa, Jebu Tado Jigiri, Kamia Yomata. Jebu Chanju Simbi Sebe Chimbadistana, George Chema Chibe, Jebu Yogure, Tichema, Yogu Tichema, Yogure, and then Ranga Keza Sakwasama, Chimbatan, Sama de Sanji Kovan Tobe Chitpangu Shadi, Peldu Yoria, Ranjinji Ko Peldu Yora, Nepa Yame Mesh, Tembuchi Yora. Chanju Simbi Chushin Takbaran, Jebu Jimbe, Mise Peor, Jebu de Zoe Meba, Sanji Kovan Topado. Tian Peldu Yora. And two children, Chibatan, Subway, Kawaka, teach the young Yeshi, Peldu Yora. Another tea Udokasa. Besha de Shanta Shana, and it to the young bear, Casa, Kega, you chicheri doa. O Tindashi is a Peldura, because she is a Loria Peldu Wandura. O Tina she is Ura. Chanju Sambi Chushin Takbari and Jebu Jimbe, Mise Peor Jose, Kona Kondo Peldu, yeah, what is that?
So here, continuing into the second half of that verse, when we do virtues, having made a motivation, thinking that for the sake of all sentient beings, may I become a Buddha, and sort of dedicating our virtues, whatever positive action we are doing, to that kind of state of Buddhahood, thinking, may I myself become a Buddha, one who has the ability to help all other sentient beings. And when we dedicate our virtues toward that kind of cause, then virtues that are held with that bodhicitta, as it explains here, alone the marvelous tree of bodhicitta constantly bears fruit and grows unceasingly. So as opposed to like a banana tree where its force is spent after it gives one round of fruit, these virtues that are dedicated with bodhicitta are like a wish-fulfilling tree. As we say in the mandala offering, right? We offer that wish-fulfilling tree. We're imagining our sort of gurus on top of it and so forth. These wish-fulfilling trees are what can create fights between the gods and the demigods, right? Because they continue to bring forth good results. They give fruit continuously, constantly, without sort of drying up. And so too, when we have dedicated our virtues with that kind of attitude of bodhicitta, they will continue to bring good results and actually increase and sort of develop more and more. So when we think about the kinds of virtues that we do with an attitude of bodhicitta, they will naturally have that sort of stability, that increase. The results will come all the way up until we achieve that state of Buddhahood. So we could think about it as like when we have some money, right? If we sort of keep it in our drawer, it's just going to remain there as that money. We could use it to buy something. But if we put it in a bank or in something that is generating interest for us, then that money is like bringing us return, right? So when we do that with our virtues, when we dedicate them or put them towards the state of enlightenment for all sentient beings, they are going to continue to sort of pay us back, to give us good results unceasingly, all the way until Buddhahood.
Oh yeah, oh do kasura. Oh tenda ko Kiwa message ya pewan dugu yone sigora. Kiwa de jebu de pang kiwa mambul pa launch sanche je pato launch yoba. Ane te ya pelje tende cheban dugu yona. Ne chanju gu semye pe. Neba do kyole kiba che menyan ba che songure sigora. Chanju gu semde tato komgure te komne te sembe kiwa kangate. Ane kasura. Jebu Kiwa Tamja to ya Jingi Chene, Sanje Kuba Toto Pado, Jebu Jingi Res, Peldo Res, Tesonda Chanju Sem, Simba Chene, Kesa Chanju Sem, Simba Chego, the Pekach Res, Tende Kishi Sogora. Yeah.
So therefore, if we want that kind of virtue that isn't exhausted upon giving a single result, that continues to increase and enhance all the way up until that state of Buddhahood, then it's saying we need to develop a bodhicitta. If we want to have that kind of virtue that isn't just exhausted after one thing, but it continues to grow and increase and give us results lifetime after lifetime, all the way until that state of Buddhahood, then we should make an effort to develop bodhicitta, to habituate our mind to that.
Oh yeah, tene ngarajo tanda chanju sim chema maimba tanda ke mena ya, ro. Kyode menga tunda ta shenyamji ko ne samlu tang che to samlu tang ge ora. Oh ti du za ko samlu tang ne. Ene so so keza kar sa na ya de. Chimba ji ne chimba paro do chimba ju ji se. Simje tamje ge de jup tum genge. Sanje je koban to be gyuru ngo yin sam. Chimba chuden sebala so wada kare kewasa na ti pa ngo yin na. Ane pe pe chimba ta 교환 매념시 폐 연구로 안 가라서래 어제인데 들으셔는 뭐지도 자주 sem비 sembe 터바 삼바 공부치기 나다로 침버치도 세발어서 봐 선남다의 시기 소가를 싸게 나티파 네 개와테 심제 탐제 그때 줍투게게 교육고세 연대 군대지 강사시 교회 교르고기 삼 선남지 소사기요나 산제지 구수주베 줄런두여라 이 시기 소사기요나 산제지 추구 캠바다 빵바다 또베 연대니들 주베 줄런두여라 어떤들 주지 삼사파 뭐셔기나 대체도 안에 두고여라 배용거라 어때서다 들으시는 거나 안에 개와디 패줘야다 남인 제부들라 로타 교환에 교환 롱제 요거데스 대인도 가르소라 대 공들이야디 로드 메세바템베 도날 디레송 샤송 거라 베나 추틱바치기요나 대다 샤나 코라 감르고라 추틱바치디 감존날 발루샤이나 감조단데네 감조날 파샤 루샤이나 아니 kon 지내게 감지지 봐도 초감감 봐도 대대라 kon염도 소에메 대라 어디나 시레송 거라 그래서 개와서 버디 추르지네 또지면도 매나 그 타이 감조날 루샤나 그 감조 써서 봐도 개버 동동 봐도 개버 동서는 네 추감로를 강가처럼 디버도 네트워크에 디 배틀티 차도 감조 메세바도 디 메세세 슈티버치디 감조날로네 감조 메세바도 데세 말스 디나시 나라저 계자디 산제지 고반 토베셔도 거베나 아니 산제제 봐도 남인 제부 빵저 롱제네 소유 매버제 터두 산제지 고반 토베셔도 도레스 디진디 자주게 셈라줄로 차네 개와 강한 사바데 디에던다로 뭐야데 개첨보레 뭐리 차세 어야 디승구다야
So right now, even if we don't have a level of like unfabricated, uncontrived bodhicitta, we are trying to develop this kind of attitude. We might develop it through the sevenfold cause and effect method, or through training our mind in equalizing and exchanging self and other. But even if it isn't yet sort of unfabricated, we should make this effort to dedicate whatever kind of virtues we are accumulating, even if it is in a contrived way, thinking that whatever it is that I do that is virtuous, whatever sort of teachings I hear, what I reflect upon, the kind of generosity I engage in, or my ethical conduct, my patience, may this go toward the cause of Buddhahood. May I myself become a being who has eliminated all faults and developed all good qualities and is thereby able to be of greatest benefit to other sentient beings. So whatever sort of virtues I do that are part of the accumulation of merit, may this go toward the cause of the form body of a Buddha. And whatever kinds of merits I accumulate in terms of the collection of wisdom, may this go toward the cause of the Dharmakaya, encompassed in the kind of realizations of a Buddha and the eliminations or the abandonments. And so when we think in that way, whatever kind of virtue we undertake, may this go toward the cause of those two bodies of a Buddha. We will gain such benefits. This is the way in which we are able to create virtues that bring good results lifetime after lifetime, that we continue to enjoy all the way until that state of Buddhahood. And the source for this then is, and I'm not sure if I'll get the Sanskrit name right, but in the sutra requested by Inexhaustible Intelligence, I believe it's Sargam, I won't get the Sanskrit name. So, but this Lodra Midzebe Do says then that like a drop of water, if we were to just place a drop of water, wherever, it will evaporate. But if we place that drop of water in the ocean, then it's as though it remains for as long as the ocean remains, right? If we only have a little tiny bit of water water, but we put it in that ocean, it becomes part of that vast ocean, then as long as that ocean lasts, so too essentially does that drop of water. So when we make the kind of effort to dedicate whatever virtues we engage in toward that state of Buddhahood, toward highest enlightenment, then we will continually enjoy those results. We will continue to be able to reap the benefits of the virtues that we have done. And so we should therefore be making an effort at setting such a motivation for our virtues or dedicating them in that way, striving to develop such an attitude of bodhicitta more and more.
Oh, yeah, this one.
Oh,
yeah, that do it. That's in the all the this on that. That's in the car soda. Oh, Ragi Keva Kama Saba in a tea. Miam Shira, Kone Kondo. Jebu Lonche, you were the Kone Kondo parent you be. Chanju simply painted over you do. And Dagaja, Ra, simply Tamjagon to Sanji Koban Tobarsha. They should do it, Tambechu. Gobolu do Sumbe, Umaranji Tomabe. Shungla Tobata Samba Kombe Rimji Jupacha, some Kuloset and the Sabar shows.
So here, in the way that we try to have all of whatever virtue we undertake, sort of not decline, but be increased, enhanced more and more through holding it with bodhicitta, having that kind of attitude. So too, we should, for listening to these teachings on the precious garland of Venerable Nagarjuna, think that whatever of this I hear, contemplate, and so forth, whatever virtue roots I create through engagement with this text, may this go toward attaining the state of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So please set a proper motivation for listening to the teachings.
Oh yeah, that and the share the Karishegurasena, Gobulu to Gera, and the Gabolia. Takara Sunam Jitsoji Yala did the Sakures, Tisongudwa. Did the Tadalia and Chibataya Mabuson saw. Oh, till me trouble in a Chibatangure, Trongina la Chiki, Misu Tesata, Chipaso, Drosalamga, Yabusoya, the Kanga, that thing's an Ashiredoa, Lamga to Yabuso, the Mikobo to Robache, oh, this is now there's a twinge in the man that to the Kanga Yabuti Childers, or the Kanga shares on Italia. The Sunamji. Soji Yalati, Kever shares of Sunam did the Sai or Sikera, Tezuko Kapchan the Sakores, Shegora. That dinner then I do the Sunam de Sosa, Jushi Shegdua, dinner the Chusumba ba. Oh, Shologa, Gabjung ba. Oh, yeah, Tatiba Loginda. Seba Tane Lonyeta, Seba Tane Lonyetas. Oh, the Karsegorasana. Seba so the Shandagi Ra. And the castle, Kabola Soba Shandagi call a Kangi Mabuso Shab, Tunge Mabura Teta, but in the Inasura. Tunge Seba, Tunge Naras, Seba Tane, Lonyetas. Yan Shimbato to Lola Tondo Yabu Machunche, Tinde Kabli Naya, I wrote what you were done, Lonyetas. And then never done this, Yan Shandagi never chune. Doa. Never done the Nayamla Soba, or Tinde never chune in Nayasura. Never done in Nicardo. Never done the Yamneta, Yamnes, not certain Gwinnett in the choice, not such a choice. And then Pamjurus, ya tried about in the chum, Chica Chomyora, at in this on any Pamnepa, Takanga, Chalakanga, Trokanga, Pumping, Tezul, Tinsanama, any Kanga, Kalema, Tezul, Robert Chevrolet, Pamjurus, you do say. Nijik Demba se Pam Dangag in Beto Sigara. In the Pambar Jube, you do ya. Nijik Dangi Sailors of Kogoto Kanga Kalayor, Tezo, Seda, Kurd, and the Melas of what is Chingo Sigara. And then you do Jikdemba, Jesus, or Cashin Juse, Tezo Sangmalia, and Robert Pendo Chigo, the Kachimbo, Jago, Res, Songoda. Ya teach you now.
So here then turning to the text and just to remember the context of this, this is talking about, and this is advice to a king, and how he needs to sort of collect the causes for the collection of merit. And sometimes we translate this as sort of branches, but really the kind of causes or what leads to the accumulation of merit. And so this is talking about things like giving to the poor, what sorts of like making good roads, what you should put out for the needy and so forth, because the king has this kind of opportunity to engage in such generosity. And here we're in a list of like 14 different ways in which he can and should be generous. This really is exhorting the king that since you have such an opportunity to provide, to be generous in this way, to create the causes of the accumulation of merit, you should do so. So here, picking up in verse 251, it says, always care extensively for places in the world that are oppressed or where crops have failed. So here, thinking about those places in the world where people are suffering oppression, maybe even by their own leaders or from some other kinds of causes and conditions, those who are suffering harm from, say, something like drought or crop failure, you should provide, you should help with those sorts of necessities. In those places that have suffered harm or where there is plague or that have been conquered in war. So those places who are where the people are suffering from, say, something like crop failure or some kind of harm potentially from an enemy or something like the plague, dealing with infectious disease, or those places that have been conquered in war and had all their like provisions, their necessities stolen or destroyed. He is saying you should provide for those who are in those kinds of situations.
Yeah, this one.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I did it. Banga just sunam just soji. Yellow share, chushy but here. Solo ganga some did it to do, or ganga some did. Oh, the car shake to sina. Shingba Yamda Jurnam la Sigdwa. Shingba che and then Yamda chen ko chikange of Sabu da pa Sabu Tabia Sabu Mevata and echo Tende Kange of the Sura. Shingba Yamda Jurnam la Sabu Sage Chesu Sonsa and the Konzo Saya Mevata and the Sabu Patabe Man Sabu Roboche Gudesa. You are Sabu da. Yamda Junamla Sabu. Oh, Tinashine. Oh, me city, me tabe, Nimanene, go Tata Palara of the Treasueta, Shirley Tayora, or to Zulasura, me Japsi. Tating sign a machine to see Pama Shagura and Roshaka. They might meet with Palanda to the Shanis, Shanis, Charles, Malem Chendora, Tinde Mange to Zula, to the Robacha with Esura. Nyamda what you were Namla Sabina, and it's Kala Sayala, so what is it? Robacha would say. Oh, Tisonguda, Jushibatete, yeah, Tichisona.
So then, turning to, and again in Geshe-la's enumeration, he's one verse ahead of us. So this is the first half of 252, and this is the 14th of these branches or causes of the accumulation of merit, which comes as provide seeds and food to farmers who have fallen on hard times. So those farmers who might, due to crop failure or some other conditions, not have seeds to plant, not have food to be able to sustain themselves, or might not have the kind of necessities like a plow. I mean, in the olden days, this would have been hooked up to various animals, you know, have them yoked together in some kind of metal thing, plowing up the land. Today, that would be machines. We can update this for modern times, as this advice really is equally applicable to today. But so for those who, farmers in particular, who have fallen on hard times, not having seeds or food or the kinds of necessities to create their crops, you should care for them.
Oh, yeah, that's Chile. That condo sheba tele shebe chimba. Yenda kuchi shegdoa. Oh, Tidisha. Then to Tambu the Karishados in it. Shenje Chache, Tawa Tawa said the Ra. O Tikarishados ne. Kebongama, any 1 year, could tell Mambo, Pasha to Sigura. 자체 수저고 신바당 잘라도 테마부 버션이 팀아자고 레세라 네 거스래 내게 자체 당와당스 개봉아마 쪽에 샌더 원유 제제배야 테파르소나 테파르와네 에네티 내게 자체 팀해버다 자체 최초로 따야 되래 더다 최초로 따고 그래서 생기 자체 땅와 땅스 되서 대체들이야 니버들 가르도스나 셰남 짱네 중화다스 셰스네 싱바 내 사자데 코나 딱보들이야 셰 제가 봐 째고에 제가 코는 야고에 여러 셰스 대조장데 코봐 요르 땅고래서라 봐째데 요요셰 싱벌 망아라고 쳐고래서 셰남 짱네 중화다 요르 땅고래서 다가나시 토게 셰남자 중화다 다들 찍버리지래 던도게 저도 기타 많이 오르다고 그래서 내 손바닥을 가려운 것도 세나 손바닥을 창이 레용 잡아다래도 창이 레용 잡아다 대가서스나 의불이야 아니 직강에 중화답지나 어때서 용서 교회 그치도 로바체고 그래서 네 대시바들이야 가르치고도 세나 쇼감다네 다 쇼감 진짜 체르지와 체지진 제대로 요르다야 되죠 개보 서베 제베 쇼감 개보 산다 로스 사바스네 테 사바르데 캡셔요나 디파 매버서 그래서 체 요르다고 그래서 쇼감 당하다세 개보사가 테 사바스 샵틴데 망적이나 띵요르다고 그래서 그전 땅아버데 반염도 랍샤는 가이세 아버데 가르스네 쇼감 티세 하자 셰베 쇼감 트와다 나데 찍버리샤 하자 망다베 케토스 바 총주 동세 아니 디버도 랍샤는 가메다 어디부터 찍구나
Yeah. So then we turn next to a section which is dealing with 9 other types of generosity aside from those 14 that were listed above. And so this then begins in the third line of verse 252, where it says, eliminate excessive taxes. So perhaps, for example, the kind of taxes that were implemented by prior kings or administrations, those that are excessive, exorbitant kinds of taxes, those should be eliminated, whether they're sort of taxes on farmers or on their goods and so forth. That's something that should be eliminated or reduced. And then in the last line of 252, it says, and so this is going to be a list of 9 things, and this is the second of those, and it is to reduce the portion of products taxed. Now here, the word is sort of like in olden times when you had a field, a farmer would have a field, and a portion of that, like a portion of the grain that they got from that field would be then given to the king or the administration. So it's essentially saying as well, reduce that kind of portion of the things that are taxed or that you are taking in. And then it says, in the first line of 253, which is then the third of these, that protect citizens from debt. So particularly those who are poor, who are in danger of being sort of taken care of or predated on in terms of their money, you should thoroughly protect them. And then fourth, and 4 and 5 are rather similar, but this comes then in the second line of 253, where the fourth of these things is to eliminate new tolls. So tolls are quite similar to taxes. And again, if a new king maybe perhaps put excessive sort of tolls or taxes on, you should eliminate those new kind of taxes. And then in the second half of that second line of 253, reduce excessive tolls. This is the fifth of these types types of generosity. So those types of tolls or taxes that are excessive should be eliminated. And so if those things are too much, again, one should get rid of them.
거야 다 tukpa디 shara.
Lare.
다 되게 되게 그말. 다 대다 고나 되바이 녀모 내자 아니 속벌 저서스도가
Topo.
가서 총바 유상단의 영대게도 수용되는 소소까지 들려 태자에다 지투준 거쪽어라 어떠도 투주 시장 고마 주제 뒤수버 깔래 여버데 녀모스도 깔래 여버데 반 너네 봐 뒤주간 요번 봐서 시오래서도 아니 tumba들 가르도세나 랑게 유다 유상지 충분 남자 시오는 저세 다 소소 롱바나 여베 꾸마다 작바다 텐데 또 미스 샹다가 주 롱바나 요세베 꾸마 작바 텐데 도서 봐 메말 강에 매버시 전 도바체고 레시고라 랑게 유다 유상지 충분 남자 시오는 저세 근데 개바들 가르쳐고 됐으나 이게 뽑네 얌바다 아니까도 렌다 제바르키도 솔세 솔가가 중앙가 되려고도 그러면 냠베 뛰어서야 하자 다 잘알아봤는데 공부쳐도 rumba시다야 빠르네 내가 좀 매버서 그래서도 공부차네 로 잘라 공부차네 야입시다 빠르셔로 빠 잘라 송게서 된데 매셔서 하자 린쳐와 데브서 쇼바 이게 보고는 냠바다 린초 진단 총나서 리버키도서 남준나시 잘라 공부차나 야파르 매셔서 집바테 채우래서라 네 고바텔이야 가르도세나 럼베 시다 지서와스 솔강업 중가 두드라 럼보속이야 럼게 개볼야 마무까지 시야고라 대체 데마주세 시다 지서라 이나야서라 니게 군도 켐버데 창망하고 와시에서 럼보속이야 쉬나 계제 야가도 가르네 강간 야고 연구래서고라 지대 멤버 강다가 대단들 따도주스 건조야 쉬어들 카셰 야고 라고르 카셰 미말이야 깔레테야 다틴데 계제 라고르 테테 태체도 당고르 지지tin데 라고르데 이나 팬도 여바 강데 소소 삼로 땅 타체체 팬도 여바 강여버데 제고레세 미말 강에테 강여버데 람나냐 요 마레스야 단다르시레도 아니 케라 드셰베 지시자 럼베 슈베 지다치 슈와 가르 표현한테 야보지 삼번드스 지달라 네바야 텐데야 슈와 표그레스 텐데들 차고레스 텐데 챤스 네바체 레팅 연구요 마레스다 니게 군도 켐바 소소 하고 하세세 상시 야게 차 지솔 팬도 여바 상마데 럼보소 라바나시 제고레스 샹다데 제고 마레스 소소 타셰고레스 텐다레 야 되질라나
So then, beginning with the second half of 253, where it's translated as eliminate the suffering of those who wait at your door with their petitions unanswered. So here, if there are like traders or businessmen from other places who have complaints about the way they were taxed or things that issues that they might have, don't leave them waiting, but rather resolve those kinds of issues, the kinds of difficulties that petitioners bring to your door. And that's then the sixth kind of these other types of generosity. And then in verse 254, the first half of that, it says, eliminate bandits from your own land and in other lands as well. So for the protection of your own citizenry and those of other lands, you should take care to eliminate those bandits, those who are out trying to steal and create trouble for others. And then in the second half of this verse 254 is this eighth type of generosity where it says, keep prices level and place the proper value on goods. So here, just because, say, something is difficult to find or is quite rare, you shouldn't allow the price to just exponentially increase. You should take care to make sure that the costs of things remain at a kind of stable level. So just because something is very widely available, not letting the price plummet and not allowing the prices of goods that are more rare or difficult to come across get excessively large. And then in the next verse, verse 255, and this is the ninth type of generosity, also kind of a summary, where it says, be thoroughly familiar with all that your advisors say, and always do whatever is healthy for the world. So a king has many advisors, ministers, and a king should listen well to all of it, to what they have to say. And some of that advice will be good advice. Some of it is advice that is beneficial to the populace, is kind of like healthy for the world. And some will give bad advice regarding like you should increase this or you should do that. And so it is it is up to a king to listen to all of that kind of advice, take in whatever is said by his various ministers, and take that up into, take up what is beneficial or what is healthy for the world, sorting through that kind of advice. Always do whatever is healthy for the world.
Oh, yeah, talk about this. Oh, that is it. Thabkhe chida chicha shise. Sosolo kebu koran pel chitida ticha gore se. Chitara chela kuyo base. Tak kubaya kondu shanda lavar se medo yese. Shembe chida chicha shi. Chicha shi tishi kyo ni kubarjo. Shenla pemba dida ticha gore se. Sosu tanda shira yobate. Nawachi yo mare se. Oh, kandidate. Tala pemba chida chicha shi chidara chola kuba yoba teshin do shenda lava the tradition in the seminar. Shenla ne pemba chida chicha shi kyone kuba the jola se o telekuseption the tipemba so chegurese. Ne o tipo to chilana.
So in the next verse, 256, it says, just as you pay attention to whatever you think will benefit you, so too pay attention to what you think will benefit others. So in the way that we sort of naturally are concerned with what will benefit ourselves, actually it's kind of saying by implication, don't pay too much attention just to what benefits you, but rather you should pay attention in that same way that we naturally do to what you think will benefit others and respectfully engage in that.
Oh, tata ne tamade tele shembe chibes do rangi chengo sutawale shemba chimbe tinde roba chegures cheja tatu de la so. Tata de nemba kare sumba de la dogba kun tong se. Shenda ne chig shenda pendo yibetene ne sama chizole memalia pa pendo was tangure se do. Oh, te kar sigore na. Dogba kun tong sholuga gabjung apje de do. Sada chuda meda long menda nage shingshindo dani yuzam chigdo ya dugur cheba nido jus ta chida mi so chida kerge tago masunga saji tinde yorwa chuya bota babchu da medo da lung changma da tinde yosetu sigora ene naksela sokwa o shindo yuna o teda yuzam chigdo ya dugur cheba te sa memo chama drocho teche kibutan sa tinde socho kure sigora o tinde jes dire to shenje tagir masonwe sada chuda meda long changma da tinde yora menda ne mengi sing tinde da na se da ku yang bu tinde jebu tangni je yu da longje tando madrum na ya se o yu sam shigdo shenje 되게 초초초지 니마니 somte tende kibu tansa tende sogore se o tende zegore se gdo ya tejilamna
So then the next verse, we've come to the kind of conclusion that refers to those 14 different kinds of causes or branches of the accumulation of merit that were really more material generosity, and then other types of generosity beyond that, those 9. And then now we turn third to giving away all that one owns or that you have ownership of. And this really also includes those things that are sort of communally owned or that don't have owners at all. So in verse 257, it says, like the earth, water, fire, and wind, wild herbs, and the plants of the forest, make yourself and your possessions available for the general enjoyment of all. So here, in the same way, and we often imagine offering these kinds of things like the sort of earth and the forest and these things that aren't really owned by anyone, the waterfalls and the flowers and the forests and the mountains and so forth, but also whatever it is that we might be the private owner of. So here, in the case of the king, their own individual enjoyments, allow those to be sort of given away for the use, for the enjoyment of others, in addition to all of those things that are not of any ownership.
Oh, yeah. That's solo Gangapchunga Gutida. Combat in bed to Suyase. Dogba Kun Tong Sem Changway. Chanju Semba Namlane. Sonam Kandra Pame Kesida. Oh, take our Sigdosina. Combat in bed to Suya, Chora Maduja. That Nanju 2 combat in Bessa Chora Telesura. 2个所讲的combat in the Chen and Shidur touch of the 2 to a chin yora. Combat in Bain is it. Combat in the Ronan till the medical shook Chedashan Shigiora. Namsan, Shek, Janamato. To Jungo, or Tinde to do so. Toya that in the to do the Chibina Sigisara. Combat in bed to so young dog were going to some chawe. Or some generally a pemba carichi genetic so much is a Tongsem did the Changur Esembere. Did the Chong in Nasigura. Chanju Samba Namla, Sonam Kandra Pame Kese. Or Tinde Samurta in it, Chanju Samba to Zola Sonam Tayaba, Namgada Draw, and a bed catch him with the Kig Esigua. Combat in bed to so young, Choema to Jazz. Ta lega chene che most of your so some luchan at some tangegi or Kulu Changuresa. Dogba Kuntonwe. Sem Chave Chanju Samba Namla, Sonam Namgata and Draw, Pame. Give it, that is a resource, or the body Juna. Yeah.
So then next, and here, the kind of interpretation might be slightly different than this translation, but it says, even when taking their 7th step, bodhisattvas have the attitude of giving away all their possessions. This produces merit in them that is as limitless as the sky itself. So here, when it comes to this the 7th step here, and this is something I never heard, but when it the 7th step is referring to there's a type of poisonous snake that once you have been bitten by this snake, basically you are going to be able to take 7 steps until you fall over and die. So it's sort of like you're at the very last of this. So when it is then at that point, we should be sort of willing to give away whatever it is, even if we aren't actually able to do that, right? It's relinquishing that kind of mental attachment to any sort of possession whatsoever. So bodhisattvas as well, being able to have given away that attitude of this is my possession, that they're really able to let go of any sense of possessing any kind of possessions for themselves. This produces merit in them that is as limitless as the sky itself. So we too should try to develop that kind of attitude of letting go of our possessions.
Well, so talk about it. Oh, that was it. That's some Chimbeton Jushandashi. Me, Chira, Tondo Newa Namla. Chimbetan. Dog walk, don't Chimbasa, or Chimbaka, Me, me up to this Chibataya or in December. Chibataya, and oh, the Sumduwa, double good Chibataya said, Tatu one would have showed that to be Chibasumdo. Tatina Tambu de me Chibataya said, Sido. Oh, Pomo Susan Lizeva, Tedenia or Namla, Cell, Cell Nasser, Cell. Tene Tamju Yonzimbe, Suni, Sosu Tober, Curse. Che Maluba Jimbe, Michibe Sunset in the Tobe, Jula do the Esa, Chikarsigorasana. Chita Gaboto, Neme Losolia, Pamina, Zamarichan and I gave so much against called Doyadua, called Ming Tobe to Dalia. And if I don't know Mabu Hotel, you said, or today is any Tezupaya, Shandalia, Terochis Church teacher, Shandal for Tesha, you said, Gaboge, or Tindicus, you said. Michi Mitaya. Oh, and then they can do Dosana. For most so the Rambuche saw the Kembe, Elegbara, Kembati, Tandonyewa, Namla, Tsenase, or Tele Chimbatana, or Condusana Shibatana. Then a Tambecho Yonson Timbe, Tunje, Sunso, Jurose. Or Tene Michibe, things the Tovet, the Cubicle do this. They change the wrong ways and it's made in the Yamakebu to Mabu or Ratonda Mabu Wisera, Comira and the Tedrosha Wisera. And it loves a Jado. Kira did somewhat Tado soon in Yani Agomare, Koran to Koran the Devonashi Shandat in the part of Chimbatan and Drocho could say, to this Pijan Yungudua, or tickets in the door. Or they change the wrong ways and a Pomoto change the wrong ways and Tati Konzo long Koran to the Tashana to Gura. But the warrior down to the chair, your mother. Jada Kanam Kunda Dembaye, Kanja Kanga Yuge, Roa, Kevu to Muyen Suduni, Kanja Yawura, Pomotonda, Jachuta Ase, Yoje Kunda Lanchi to Tubayene, Munchetus, Munsanje Sumden, Kevo, Karisere, Kanam Kunda Dembe, Sanje Sumden, Chanjo Sembene Kabria, Kevu Send in the Shay or Ese, Lujuna Yo Insera. Kenam Tamjeta Dembe Pomotonda Kachuta, any Dogba Yoche Chala, that Kanjata Cheba Samachata, Gunda, Senji Toba Yene, Kabu Tapataya said the Kurve Kabli, Kawashibe Kablia, Tezukanga Chimbatan Luchi or Eser. Tell to us. Oh, teacher Lapshana, yeah. Tuju de Jidimba.
Oh, yeah. So then we come to like a number of types of generosity that are dependent upon the particulars that of what someone is seeking out. So here there are various different topics that will come, but here we have then first in 259. Bestowing upon those who seek them people, actually, and here referring to women. So when we think about the context of the time of a king, I mean, a king has a great deal of like sort of power and this name and so forth, and a lot of maidens, women, might have been attracted to that, interested in being near the king and sort of placing themselves at his feet, wanting to be their women. And so the advice here is that the king shouldn't sort of hoard these for himself, but rather should bestow them upon others who are seeking them. And this then leads to attaining the Dharani that holds the holy Dharma. So it reads, if you bestow well-adorned, beautiful maidens upon those who seek them, you will thereby attain the Dharanis that hold the holy Dharma. So here again, we need to remember the kind kind of context of this time, and that these women would have initially sort of perhaps offered themselves to the king or want to be around the king. And so, these beautiful women that are adorned with various jewelries and so forth, the king shouldn't just keep them for himself, but rather should bestow them or offer them to those who are seeking for them. And this then leads to the Dharani that holds the holy Dharma. Now, someone might have the question, well, is that really appropriate to offer women in this way? And again, we have to remember that perhaps these women had initially offered themselves to the king, sort of looking for a name or good renown and so forth, and then they're kind of at his will, we could say. But also there is a historical precedent for this in that when the Buddha was a bodhisattva at the time of training, he engaged in that kind of generosity. So previously the victor, this is in verse 260, previously the victor bestowed 80,000 maidens adorned with all kinds of ornaments, accompanied by all kinds of goods. So if you belong to the king as a maiden, you probably have very nice jewelry and all kinds of adornments and so forth. And when the king would make that kind of offering of those women, they would go along with all of that kind of stuff. And so at the time when the Buddha was still a bodhisattva, there is a story of him having made an offering of 80,000 maidens along with their jewelry and various instruments and so forth. And so this was when he was infinite renown previously at a different time.
다 주주링이 돼봐. 뭐야? 나저 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 바다 왜세세. 오늘 고아다다 개남다. 지다 청어 lon주다. 로안남라. 제베절 짐바다 계셔도 가수로서 장타야 봤어. 나서서 장타야 봤잖아. 담에다 지치 롱게만 보여보라. 나서반 담에다서. 장간 나서 메다메다. 아니 남바 다시 소소 점마다 뒤다 보시겠어라. 나서 바다 어세와세. 따보 잘라야 보제보 장게 야고된데 식 패매도 멤버 야고였던데. 남바 다시스 이동화도 된데. 소소 점마다 때에 닝바도 된데 많이 서버 어세와 고아다다 개남다 견자다 지다 청와 메도다 라 지다 청와다 사야다 동야다 뜻셈이라 라소베 롱제바다 롱남라 제베 절지시 담소스 롱게 졸리한테 주가가 세나 좀 메다메다다 피타고 사르와다 어딘데 야고 주바탄 거래셈이라 야 되게
And then next, coming in verse 261, is generosity for those who are striving for all kinds of possessions. So to those who come begging, lovingly give numerous and resplendent clothes, ornaments, perfumes, and garlands, and other objects of enjoyment. So to those who come seeking, whatever it might be, so give all kinds of a variety of beautiful clothing, useful objects, things like perfumes and garlands, whatever it is that one might enjoy. And so here, one shouldn't give things that are sort of old or used. One shouldn't give things of lesser quality, but those things that are excellent, and to do so in a way, giving away such things as, again, like, perfumes and garlands, food and drink, flowers and so forth, all sorts of enjoyments. Give those lovingly to those who might beg for them.
Oh yeah, that's all got to see some data. Oh yeah, Kala Chete Kame Base, Shindo Nyamta Kurvatese, Te Mela Tetzelnas, Kale Chinjo Machisos, Chimbacho the Kibaresuda. te kar sigura sa kansa kanla sigura kanla chöden kanme basa kansa kanla chöden do nyawa yena ya ko chö shengen da chi tende da chi nyaya ge kuga meba te zola sigura kanla chöden kanme basa kansa kanla ro chö ge ten kan ane chö nyembe tunji mena sigura te mebe shindu nyamdakwa ko chö nyendo yona ya chö ma shimbaji tende tenge yina sigura churba tela te mela tunjin de tsena se korang le che she sa da nya sa da tedi che sa wa tende so wo de se mere te tsena ra tunjin tsena tele chincho ma chi su te chimbe cho do ju bare chimba changma na ne che ji chimba de cho yin so do anam ju kares ne che ji chimba de se ko la so ba chimba de negam ku ti ra 최지 전부터 삼을 땅다데 시에 땐도 때와 내가 때와 땐도 때와 니가 그래봐 제가 진배나네 초도 줘버데 최지 집어데 예송보다 어디서거라 최년배 튼진 냠다와 줘버데 뭐라 튼진 됐잖아 텔레 진조 마치소 어세 년배 최대야 진벌이 주로에 처리 장주 선바 셴라 두 진벌 미래소 냠나세 아다 텐다티 네멜로서 전 최근에 로서 전에 때려도 미 지속이 삼로당다 지기절 저와치다 가르쳐오래 삼로당다 가르쳐오래 미다미 저와치도서 로아 아니 류가권에 셔바 가르종그래 가르종그 말에 랑라 펜바카레 샹라 펜바카레 랑다 샹니갈 네바카레 테 매버서 군주들랍기도 하셔스데 semge samlu tangda chizo na rita tilab ke wara te koya ke chambure te wara tende te ke chambu chigo ta ngeme lo so chido ta tengsa na chö sido yang chi labare tamu cha ta as te de chile chö se kudo chido samlu ke me le ga ma che ta as tenge so ra chi koya ye ga do mi ma chi ngone chen chö da de ma ra samlu tangda mi chizo le drawa sambu chi ya ta 저 냠바치 칠 강에서야 돼 가야 된다래 저기 납치돼 거라 어디 이제 개천부처스도 강라 최대 강에 봐 신도 냠다 주루와 대세 삼로 당당 신게 말와 낭미 컨데스 정고래 미던자와 컨데스 오래 첸디 컨데스 뭐 삼로 당고래 대 삼로 야부 당신나 강에 마부지 셀도라 샘지 동에 마부지 셀도래 밀리 저와치다데 빼야르도라 뒤던달 시거라. 근데 가사 가라 최가 된데서 냠다고 텔라 튕긴데잖아. 텔레 침배 쳐도 집에 샴바 치서죠. 가 냠배 쳐대야 침벌이 교회 치르세. 야 티체 chanju sembe shala tu chimba reso 냠나스 ale ore tamati chi shashana ya
So then coming in verse 262 is the generosity of giving in accordance with the Dharma. And here it says, there is no greater act of generosity than to grant to the extremely unfortunate who are bereft of some aspect of the Dharma the happy chance to receive teachings on it. Really, when it comes to the supreme form of generosity, this is the Dharma. Giving someone the kinds of conditions or the ability to listen to the Dharma. Someone maybe wants to listen to the Dharma, but they don't have the proper kinds of conditions to do so. This giving them that kind of opportunity is the supreme form of generosity. I mean, if we give someone some material goods, that is temporarily beneficial, but giving the Dharma is something that is beneficial in the short term and the long term. It's the means by which we gain temporary and ultimate happiness. So really, the kinds of advice of the Dharma are essential to society, to understand how do we interact with others in society? What is beneficial to me? What is beneficial to others? What is beneficial to both of us? So the kind of advice of Dharma is something that is crucial for a society to really have a kind of good interactions and to move in a positive direction. These days, we often think of like religion or Dharma as being something totally separate from the kind of life of society. It's like, oh, that's what those people do on the side. They sit over here. And we have this kind of misunderstanding that the advice given in those religious traditions has nothing to do with everyday living and life. And that's a real mistake, because it's actually the kind of advice that comes in the Dharma is the best advice that we could have for how to live in society. And when we don't know how to act and think, we create so much suffering. By changing our way of thinking, we are able to reduce our suffering greatly. So here, where again it says that there is no greater act of generosity than to grant to the extremely unfortunate who are bereft of some aspect of Dharma the happy chance to receive teachings on it. I mean, those who are extremely unfortunate, who don't have the kind of means, the way of thinking, whatever sort of ability the king could have to create the conducive conditions for listening to the Dharma, that Dharma is able to bring them a kind of relief. And whatever sort of activities they do to make that possible, that is then the generosity of the Dharma.
뭐야, 진짜고 넘버 전에 더 최대 패키지 좀 붙여라. 아주 지다 가르쳐 그래서 최고 전에 다 대선에는 최고 전에야 다수고도 하시기지려. 최 현다지 지고 그 현다 가르치기는 지 심전 탐제에서 심전 대원들로 동에 면도반이 진제대로 고텔을 잠바다 싸와 처방안에 잠바 sem기 송구라. 그 최놓고 삼로 가르단 최 가르치기만 개발게 요 말아. 됐다야 요 말아. 심지어 탐제와 탐제를 처방구래. 진이지 뱀바 쪽으로. 다 최대 전에 고출로 가지고 튕김에도 현다지레셔선에 미세를 빼도다. 나대표님가 전부라. 되는 가지고 그 배전을 디시고라. 화두도 봐버려. 최대 라인 백까지를 뜨는도를 해서라. 내 도도 줄세. 근데 매데 착당 봐야게 심지어는 잠재 요약에 매더들이. 근데 뒤에서는 매데 도도 하나 시대. 다틀에 년가 차야는 요 말이시고라. 뒤에도 가서 디날 연구도 주주도 도서날. 근데 수 최래 매라타나 서버 공고래 베레 공고래셔라. 근데 도시대기 최대 자체실적이어라. 대소판 직벌시나 텔레 닝지 공고를 서버 공고를 갑자기 짜고 말을 콜바. 이제 어때 갑자기 짜요 말했어도. 구수 최대 담줄라 최신 직벌 제봐야 다기시 당 미리 됐어. 산제솔은 명아스여라. 대지방이나 또 콘도치기와 말고 메시아나 착당 시험도 주네. 콘 제가 셰바랑 셔도 많이 버려서 되어라. 대인데 콜이야 저와 공부를 야, 맞도 나저 배전나 제베는 그 장원에 대해서 녀모보다 미시베 몽반이도 잘했으고라 나베 장이스라 녀모베 잘다 미시베 몽바 잘이셔라. 심지어 년도 담아도 네 트라이인세스 요마 단지된 용다가 자세 샤샤요데 최선의 전에 다르지야 요 말이스겨라. 어디인데 가서라. 어디 진주도스날 야보이고도 구수 최대 담조라 최신 직벌시바 최신스도 독자를 당배 최신 독자시다를 제바부 켈링교 말에 다 켈링교 말이지 삼로 독자 망부셔라. 아니 최대한도 식 정말로 아니마 망쳐 자갈래 된데 식도 힌두데다 릭데데 소티아다 제바부 매버데다 다음에서 되게 애니페 두자시부 되기도 하면도 야고샤고 요 말아 된데 전에 너무 망부터 들어와 망부터 매버서 살아 리토메도 구여라 리토메도 지sol 거기도 삼네 대매버서 샤기도 삼 대적미도 삼 가져 요구 정계 가져 요구 그 세대 베지셔서 매버서 삼겨라 된데 야 어디질람네 된데 로그 말에 송구도 최대 가림보다 하마고 신의 야가시라도 최세대 간에 하마고나 아니 최도 우리 세라 되는 거야 야 된데 야 어디질람
So here, when we talk about the generosity of the Dharma as being the supreme form of generosity, that's really contingent upon our using Dharma or religion in the right way. Religion should be something that is the source of benefit, right? But religion in these days can, and in the past, can become something that rather than really being about benefit, it becomes a source of our creating enemies and saying like, and divisions and so forth. And so when we talk about for example, great compassion, that is something that extends to all sentient beings. Every single sentient being has the desire to be happy and the desire not to suffer. And it is on that basis that we extend our love and compassion to them, not because they're part of our group or our religion or something like that. However, there are those who misuse religion in that way, rather than having it be something that, like, for example, that kind of love and compassion that extends to all sentient beings, it's used as a point of making divisions. And we would really see this as being an example of what in the Lojong text we talk about making a god into a demon. Something like our Dharma that should be of benefit to us becomes the source of problems. We have transmuted that into something where this medicine of the Dharma becomes poisonous. And so here, even in the case of those who say disparage the Dharma, who hurt it in some way, we shouldn't feel like, oh, that's our enemy, right? I need to get back at them. Even if we're to say, witness someone destroying Bodh Gaya, the most sacred kind of stupa for Buddhists, we shouldn't feel hatred toward them, right? They are the object, they should be the object of our compassion. It's not right to feel any kind of hatred or anger, even for those who would try to destroy our religion. Rather, we should see, oh, they are under the control of their afflictions, of their anger and their hatred, and really, they should be an object of my compassion. As we are taught again and again, our actual enemies are ignorance and the afflictions. There's never a time where the human being, the human or being becomes our enemy, really. And this is something where we see, for example, like in a religion like Hinduism, there is a very strong attachment to this idea of caste, of a position that one has in society. So, for example, they will look at those who they consider to be of a lower caste, and they automatically assume that by their nature they are to be sort of subservient and to serve on others and so forth. And so taking something like religion, a view that is supposed to be of benefit to us, and like transforming it into something that actually creates harm or disparages others, looks down upon others, is really, again, taking something that should be good, something that should be medicinal and beneficial, and transmuting that into poison. So here, even if we don't agree with others, even if they are actively harming our religion, there's no point, there's no place for hatred there. Rather, it's a situation where our real enemies are always our own affliction. Ignorance and the afflictions are the real enemies, not other human beings.
Oh yeah. Oh, that on the Kasora. Chardang de Cochidan, a love where your mother, Samalang, Shuti, Churchill, Kondo Sayata, Tango Cheata, Shinjachi Sadati, Tanduta Kangala Yore, Miller Koyata Yora, what in the tea, church on and love where your mother. Tim ever sweat on the love Gora, Chulukangabe. Teach more diet on the love Gora. Tingaranzuti, when a Churtan love Givati, Churtashana, and that the tell to us your mara, and the Merun set on the Redua. Yeah, what is you?
So, I mean, we don't really even have to mention this, but all of the traditions of their heart look at the kind of our negative afflictions and emotions and see those as something that is to be reduced, that is to be eliminated. None of them advocate for sort of indulging in them. So we should really keep that in mind, that all traditions are very clear on that.
Moya, that's an editor. Oh, the she taught in Wizara. Sumba said she taught in Sada. She taught in last, it said, telling with matter. Continue with Sera. Oh, Sumba said it all. Tindivish. Tatane Shologa Tuju Dipshidira. Oh, Tikadosna. Kala Tuni Penjo, oh, Titama Tirida. Tana Simjalia, Co Longa Kanga Chin, Tindeshiguna. She told Lonson and tell her to a tag with a Vasigora. Simjalia, Chimbachina, teaching at a Kodova, Pendo Tuguyana. And it took Koyasinaco, took tag with a Vasina. Oh, Chanju Simbe Shala, two Chimba, Miriso Yamnasi, Kangach Terrose, Kangatandere, two Terrosina, and it Digi Arabesana, oh, Digi Aresere, Kandedesina, Kot Tugi Pendo Yovachina, man of children draw the Tinder question, it talks over two Pendo Yovachina, called two at Esera. Oh, never Yovachina, two Mainga Yaga to call it Trana, never Yonguna, te you my reason guara. Kala tu ni pen yo na tela tu jan shimbar kise. Ara. Kase cho jan me pen na sa kala be pita bu ya utin de ne kol pendo me na zari chikengi. Tela negi yo na kol te you my reason ra. Ko pege pen ma pen ta ko ma to kita he ke yo mara. Es ro. Kase cho jan me pen na tela tijin mi ji uza. Yaga jina kol pendo me ne yon do yone ko tichin yo mare sere. Duga jina ko pige me do tinde tol do yone tichin good esera. Oh ya, tin du karsore. Oh tina shin ti wo de le chibore sha. Trige sin la chitabo. Sormo cheba sheba das. To do da je so jabsona. Ene ko te jawa ma jene to dia chamni shigra. Kangbar jene te kangba che ko ne che shagora ko choye tandalia. Kangba de cheshan and Kutudia Chabgamarwa, or Tinders on the cover, Kopula Pembes to Negab to never get in the Chegua Yungu or Resigora. Tree seen like Chitabur, so much about Penshabas, Laquariche Socanes, so much like what check on the Cheshara, a Penshabas. Tishi and Tishi to be Champagne, Tishi to be. Tishi to be champagne bar, champagne bar. Medewaya, Chawara so. O Kobe Pusu Pengayana nega Medewayana dear, Chago Res, Ravangarato, Mehanda Shabju Chigora, and it's to Kaletos Yuna, pool paint and all that is check with the Yungora. What in the Nella Sobakala, two in Pember Juvatella, two Genshin Barkis. Kase cho yin jang ko never che ko kase shimbu shibu yina ko sanyi to test ne te yamaro ko na san ne nyanga yora kase cho jang mi pena te la chimbar mi ji shin se tuji simbala sormo cheba o te yala la so but de che ko yungo re te ko soye to dala pusu pembat kache bu so da te nega to sun ne cha ko yore se pembar sheba te shin do to be shala tuve shala pemba yina che medeya pusu penge yina nega bringa to medewa yina te chegu gure sigora oh tine kase chela medewa chawar sung besere oh tiba de chichuna ya oh tiba de chichuna.
So here, finishing this up before then we turn to the accumulation of wisdom. This comes then in verse 263 and 264. And so someone might have a thought, well, okay, you're saying that bodhisattvas are to give everything to others, but what about something like poison? Is that appropriate? And so then it comes in verse 263 that you should even give poison to those for whom poison would be beneficial. So here, it's essential that one consider the kind of benefit. It's not just about the object itself, like, oh, that's poison and it's inherently bad. But if it is something that would act as medicine for someone, then even that is to be given. So here, if there's a benefit to be had by looking at what would happen on giving that, then you should do so. If it is something that is is beneficial. And you shouldn't just give whatever seems like the best just because you think it will be beneficial, but rather should consider that. So coming in the next half of this, but if even the best food will not help someone, do not give it to them. So here we might think, oh, I have the best thing. This is really good. This is the best food or so forth. But if it's not going to be beneficial to the recipient, then again, that's something that you shouldn't give to them. We need to evaluate what the benefit will be. And then continuing into verse 264, this is really getting at the necessity of considering the temporary kind of suffering or difficulty with the long-term benefit. It is said that if a snake has bitten one's finger, it is helpful to amputate it, right? In order to protect our lives. Like if we get bitten by a snake, we're willing to cut off our hand or our foot, to preserve our life, to make sure that that poison doesn't spread throughout the body. And so too, likewise, the sage has said that if it benefits others, one should do even something unpleasant. So, for example, if one has to do something that in the short term doesn't seem pleasant, we do this all the time with medical treatments, like if we need to take some kind of unpleasant medicine or undergo surgery and so forth, we recognize that in the long term that is beneficial, even if in the short term it is unpleasant. So here one should evaluate accordingly in terms of trying to benefit others. Those things that one knows are normally poison but will act as medicine for this recipient, one should give. Things that are really seem like the nicest, but in this case will not be of benefit, one shouldn't give those things. And so too, even if something in the short term causes some kind of difficulty or is unpleasant, uncomfortable, but there's a long-term benefit, then that is to be done.
Oh yeah. 당한 주대로도 됐다 이시기 초기 연락서도 신경 고쳐도. 이봐 이시기 초기 연락서 단다다데 주셔 지제세들입니다. 니오들에. 이봐 이시기 초기 연락. 그네 마무도 왔다들 이시장가지도 이시기 초사바 연락들을 요래도 이시기 초사에 된다 땡고를 쓴 거라. 다마 이거 소남지 초사에 된다 된다 요래도 간가 땡고를 쓴 거라. 소남지 초사에 돼 나라조 가서래. 단데 내가 그랬지네 콜하담메다 리프송 사바께 줄어도라. 이시 초대전에 고 시럽이 앞에야 단데 줄어도라. 다들 전주 삼지선에서나 네 소군지 주 소남지 초다. 이시 초서 치고도 줄어도라. 당가라도 듣는 맹게서 지다 류다 셈이부터 교치마 교야 올라야 된다 줄어라. 단데는 뭐 이시기 소지야라. 이슈생아스다 장가틀라 먹어 방저를 그라. 어디르셔. 담배 추당 추마와 담배 추당 추마와 니지 고디 초당내세. 아니 담배 추 자와티르더라. 담배 추당 추마와 니지 고디 초당내세. 제 가르쳐도스네. 담배 추당 담배 추 나르베 텐주 당 나게 심균 되게 쳐도 아니 지그 semla chuju tang ya chöde le chösi wara tambe chö nangre be tenju tang ase chö ma wa ni ji chö ma wa le ya ni ji na sa da se ta choye tu da le chö ma wa le si wara na sa tu lo da ko da se la so ba se la so be ku di chö da ne che ban jö so de chö ge da da le ya shi ge cho se ya tu da tambe chö le ya ni karsore tarve yoya da mele chizol pendo to dal tiche ures kubata chet tengures che ma wala ya ni chi che bange tel tinji kora choye ge chodero choye tendo ya den ningu shapto le sobo saya to ko ya le sobo te tinji cha ures tambe che da che ma wa ni ge ku de cho da ne se chodo je wa je ura tambe che 나르베 텐주다 최마와 니게 나사다 제바 라소베 고디 초단에 제바 제세 당부도 이시기 소사에 된다랴 나르베 최 삼르당다 러빙에게 최대다 뒤땡게 되랴 야부시세 니가 야 가서네 내다 깨야 된다랴 되네 탑시 자고레스 되시도 어디지라
Mm.
이시지 소사에 야랑 뭐 주거라 야
Mm. So then we turn next to then the branches or the causes for the collection, the accumulation of wisdom. So in general, when we think about the accumulation of merit, our merits in general lead to good results as humans or gods. And those things that we do to increase or develop our wisdom are the accumulation of wisdom. When those are held then with an attitude of bodhicitta, those go toward the two bodies of a Buddha. Those causes are not just bringing good results in the future or enhancing our wisdom, but are leading toward the form and the wisdom bodies of a Buddha. Now here, there will be 25 of these that come in order. We don't need to list out all of them, but it begins with the first half of 265, where it reads, have supreme respect for the holy Dharma and those who teach the Dharma. So these are, again, sort of causes or ways in which we accumulate the collection of wisdom. And the first of these is by having respect, sort of reverence for both the holy Dharma, the Dharma being those teachings which transform our mind, and those who teach them, sort of serving on them, having respect for them in terms of providing for the necessities like their food and clothing and so forth. That kind of supreme reverence is the way in which one should act toward the holy Dharma itself and those who teach the holy Dharma. Again, creating the conditions for the continued abiding of the Dharma within the world.
오야 네 거에 개체버리도 이거 이시지 소 셰온도 가르치도서도 담배 최다 최마와라 니지 꾸디 쳐다 담배 최대래 야구체네 내야다 셰야다 들으셔라 최마와 들려야티 튀지 줘라 최마와 땅에멜로 전에 최마와도 현다한테 메시지에 럽도 좀 와라 저 초아시알라 손님 전도에다 근데 디시샤도 시셔요라 자 담배 추세대 또 가르치도서나 담배 추 나르베 땡주다시도 나더르베 semla 주주다 들 추시고라 semla 주주다네 아니 되게 나르게 계시다 류지 줘방에 뭐사마 가야다 상보때에 나게 용거라 semla 주주 마시는 콜령아 니부터 sem게 가제레 마도 콜롱 라와션 티케요 마로 어때도 장고 추세대 또 semla 주주다 내가 저 망쳐 지금 뒤sorg면도 소소 샘딩에만 나시 샤아제네 최치기 삼기도 진 최요 말에 semla 주주다 된다를 최소 거 알아 뒤에 된다를 마도전 뒤최 원해들에 뒤전에 뒤때네 내 된다를 뒤 럽제 뒤 강경게 최장장 삼로 당하지 숑도 태바체 삼바체 공바체 땡게 튕긴 현다 매선게 뒤장장 땡게 도들 튕기 좋아데 고요라 지소 미망하게 될 튕기 잔테 내 톱고라 고랑도 뒤 소와 용해 탑시시 뒤 지고요 말 최장장 된다려 셰야다 소소 태바체라 대야 튕기치 니멜로스 전에 때려도 어디 계신 분이도 하셔서 이시지 소세대 사야게 양라들이야 가르스네 담배 추데 가르스나 나르베 땡줄라서 도타 땡줄라서 버와 지단 땡주 세대 산제 깔에 땡주 조고요라 명 말아주 가스도 산제 가듯이 땡주 세대 데버들 고요라 시다 땡스도 뒷tem발에 땡네 뒤에 심규 셴네 셴도 쩨베나 땡주 세 명다기도 저 땡주세 다시된 돌아연 중고요라 산제게 뒷tem발에 땡네 뒤에 심규를 주었던 게 와라 뒷단계게 땡주 될어티래 도당 땡주 산제게 도좀 송버송전 도도세샤라 산제게 송들은 도세 나도 땡주 산제게 깔에 땡주가 명주고요 데 가르서 돈다셔나 뒷tem발에 땡네 뒤에 심규 셴네 셴도 쩨봐 그러와 대소다 어때 최세대 저한테 임받은 가지고 아고고도 어디 단디 가서라 이시지 소지 양라의 시행도자 담배 최단 최망 올라야 아니 꾸디샵도 쇼래 저래 뒤최대 가래서나 나들이 봐라 나게 심규 대회 최대래 심규 대회 최대는 령한 최반이든 대회도 공하게 영향을 뒤쇼를 요구라 뒤소다 뒤조식도 오야 나게 땡주 그만둬서 담배 쉐 나르게 땡주다 최마와 예제 나사다 셀라 소바 고디초다네 때모디 제시에세 개볼이야 롱베나리아 쉐디야고 네해던달이야 어디니니디야고 네 로봇체 우레세 디셰그도 당부들래 이시게 속에 야라 당부야 되지실람나
So here, this first sort of branch or cause of the accumulation of wisdom is something that is really important, right? To have the teachings remain, one needs to have those who are explaining those teachings. And previously, this generally meant those who took ordination, those who lived separate and apart from society, say going and begging for alms and so forth. And so here, to provide the conditions for them to be able to uphold those teachings is something that is very important. And so here, when it comes to the word Dharma, and here in the commentary it refers to it as the holy Dharma of the kind of treatises of inner science, we could say, because Dharma is really at its heart an inner kind of science. When we are talking about Dharma, it's about transforming the mind. It's not about doing something just external with our body and our speech. If we allow ourselves to have our mind just remain as it is, but then we say, oh yeah, I'm doing Dharma, that really is not going toward the Dharma. It really is fundamentally working with our minds. We listen to the various teachings, we contemplate them, we meditate on them. And those who uphold the teachings are really the ones that are doing that in a way that keeps these teachings going. And so here, when it comes to those who are devoted to that, they aren't engaged in the regular sort of manners of society to sustain themselves, but rather as a king to be able to support those who are upholding the teachings is something that one should do. So it's important for us here to understand the main meaning of Dharma, which is really about subduing the mind. It's not about our physical or our verbal acts. Those will follow. If we tame, if we work on our mind, that is something that will come out of that. We will change as well our speech and our body, our physical actions. But it's most important to understand that when we talk about the holy Dharma, it's really an inner kind of a science. And here, the word that is used, and I have been translating as like treatise, or we could say shastra. This is something that encompasses, really we could say encompasses all of the speech of the Buddha as well, although we usually use this term in reference to those kinds of commentaries on the Buddha's speech that are by authoritative Indian masters. But this word in Tibetan ten che, I mean, it's teachings that are intended to fix, to transform, or to change one's mind. And so all of the teachings of the Buddha could kind of fall in that category, although we often use that in the context of specific shastras. But again, it's crucial for us to understand that those teachings are really an inner science, are about the way that our mind works. And we as practitioners need to take the care to make sure we are affecting our mind. And so the king here is being advised that in order for these teachings to remain, you should create the kind of conducive conditions whereby those who uphold them are able to survive, sustain themselves.
Oh yeah, tanga junibader. Tande kasara. 이시기 초기 양라들고 지시도 장가 몽부시도 같은 를 장가 잡고서 이번 이시기 초 니수장가 시기도 단 이번들은 바제 용거라 니수장가 받은 용거라 뭐다 자와 그거를 제대 최 년신시 지송도 아니 캥바반데서 최년배 법값을 캥바반데 최생계 있는데 최년계 있는데 그 캥바방구라 최생계들 그 법불로서 저는 틀에 직접 통보를 써야 돼. 그 최지 채워야 돼도 강사들 거래 매천에 되게 말로 지당 아주 doa tezuna labo kemba solo kushapshede ko kewa manga ngeles manga sayo res te kushapchigora mato me bachibare tichane ko me bechane shichun tindege chigyo mara akran kewa manga sayo res tichane kubechigora tisamgura pajotege 최지 chewayin 최지 chewachen konju tichigore samsa tiri mato soso chewachen ke mara o 최년계 쪽에 다가나시 로아 지 나게 맞게 비체체 그거다 제도 최년고에서 최신에 년계니가 그러 디 틀리안저 등한 좀 남지 최세도 최통부를 자그러 디 최지 chewa 생게지 샤니 지버지 된다데 셰발은 지버지 먹고 양다바인 콩제주 야고지 생계연의 콩제주 뭐에 내주tin데 임버듯이 뒤던달을 샤비오라 생게티 샴발을 쇼세 좀 된데게 실질적인 노선데 좀 된데 랑이지 생게티 샴발을 쇼세라 코란 쇼세 트데 코란랑 제 생게도스 티제 야치 통보시 건데네 최기 치외치도 송요라 이는 아주 남게 최 생게서 대강 때도 캠버 중에 된다를 세골도 믿다봐 세골답지 믿다봐 예삼 나야 대가데 나 통보를 십시했습니다 대요 말와 최기 저와 예삼 최 생게 매천의 콘텐츠 지에서 믿다봐 예삼 세골도 오고도 세골스 나고라
Yeah.
이래서라 당연히 저건 나네 다다 정말 뭐 쉽지 못해 되게 좀 그래 네 어제 가서 다니더니 그 말씀에 최년신에서 캥바방데 그보다 제대 최년신 때보다서 야 되질랍나 냠도 올라서네 최년바 직서 다 숨바들야네 최지 심바다냐 저세 최지 심바다냐 저 직제 솔가 두주리도 될래도 레밤라 소베 최지 심바다냐 저제세 최년배 튼지 대사다 레밤 최다 이게 나서 요구다 근데데 로봇체고래서라 맹게 졸려게 졸내는 건디라 요라 맹게 졸려 가지고 때 떠나식보다 최신게르지 요나 고 요야 빼야버리고 텔레 떠나체베데 삼사 탱고라 아데 메데 야고이나 메나서 엘레한테 더고 메 야고 메나 고 야고 차에 로요라 최세지 전에 야고 메나 야고 차에 로요라 디 멤버십 다디 최기 팬도 제데 팬도 나는 야쇼데레데도 코스름을 팽기라 저가 야르로라 어디인데 그거 야고래서 콜이야고 이제 문제 고 저방 멤버들도 나 지전에 코 상부체 야고 차그를 삼사 뒤쪽으로 가지고 그 야구 얘기만 다시 땅에만 비셔 야구요 말했어 대 야구 말해 근데 지금 말아 술래이나 고셔야 돼 깨바상부 구급상부 라와 산제 템버서야 돼 산제 지대 감수야 거뭐 타르바서야다 다음에 서라 산제 고바서 토야 고라 가고라 드레실 바샤라 샤야 단다 구급이도 콜레 구급도 연구를 삼티 패케이션 붙이고도 오야 진대서 그버서 디션이다 순반에 최지 진바다냐 저서 대체 최 주에 튼지 땅 대주 강가 로버체고도 대체 전에 지대 담라 가워져서 디카르시고레스나 지대 담라 가게 샬라 너바다 팬에 매베 지대게 담라 가와 만제세 가 만제르다 지대 담라 가 만제라 예 간제세 로시 미야고라 토비오 말에 삼장 걸어 저여래 아니 가사 지대 담라 가 만제세 지대 베 담려야 가와 만제세 샬라 너바에 지대게 담 로와 팬에 매베 지대게 담 깨져 망부시에 가셔야 계속 가고요도 지 시합다가 밀려야 주셨던 것도 지지 야구를 마음에 못해 두버리냐 미치도 시치라 생존매삼스 지 조지반데 어디서 수했단 말이야 생존매삼 랑존 삼라 랑존 당연신도 중세라 현대 교를 삼로마다서 고거라이네 고란치를 되어래 소소견을 삼다 소소 다고야 탑시 쳐라 란전에서 현재 삼라 말은 현재에서 란전 삼라서 그걸 다시 그거지 아니 개화에는 란 개화식을 삼는 야와를 지금 되게 나게 맞춰서 현재 개화식부터 삼다는 그 샵시서라 현재 삼는 거 다이 그래 오야 니거도 샬란네 바다 팬네 매벤지 내게 담라 가와 만제사 최지 바셰든지 때가래 최지 바셰 요래 니 차당 깨지 망부셰라 까메가 깨지 망부셰라 진짜 이 새끼요 말이잖아 내가 와들 가른 도세나 지된 데라 제버 저사 코알렌 데베 탑라 소관 지델렌 데베 담라 제버 저사 타르와 토야 산제지 고바 토야 참니지 잔주 셈라 소바 깨져 약보 지졸 팬도 여기 깨졌는데 셰라 까부쳐버려 뒤까지에 셰 투에 탑시쳐오라 나와서 최셰스도 이제 뭐지 최셰바 보이니 저거 말해 깨져 셰게 셰글에 그 야가 돌파 깨져 걸 곱대트 뜻에네 팬도 요라 지된 담라 제번 저래 코랄렌 데베 tabla sokwa jikden debe tamla da jikden dela kebrdo jikden ben debe tamma tarba tamje chemba ni ju chochi atezu yabude jikden ben nirin chakdang che da chitme che da de mogore tenta yo mare tezu tenta mebudu yushaure o tibadu chilamnia ngababadu des digda
So here again we have these 25 things, 25 causes of the accumulation of wisdom, and here the second of these comes in the third verse of 265 where it says respectfully listen to the Dharma. So here when it comes to listening to the Dharma, both those who are explaining the Dharma as well as those listening should get rid of any kind of arrogance, right? When it comes to the Dharma, one should listen in a respectful sort of a way. And those who are explaining, this is equally applicable to them. When we think about why we sort of have reverence for the person who is making an explanation of the Dharma, it is really because of the greatness of the Dharma, right? It's not about that individual person, but they are engaged in an activity that is very virtuous because of the greatness of the Dharma. And that's why we bow down to them. That's why we show them such reverence and respect. So the person who is explaining shouldn't feel this kind of like arrogance, like, oh, these people are bowing to me, or like those that are, you often have this throne that so someone climbs up on to explain the Dharma, and they shouldn't feel a kind of arrogance as that at that, right? Like, oh, this is all for me. These are these lions and so forth. I mean, the whole idea of that throne is symbolic of the greatness of the Dharma that has been actualized by the Buddha. For example, those 4 lions representing the 4 fearlessnesses or the 4 correct perceptions and so forth. And so when it comes to someone who is giving an explanation of the Dharma, actually, in order to help get rid of that kind of potential arrogance or pride that they might feel, we often see them, and Genla was doing it sort of below my visual space, but snaps their fingers when they're getting up on the throne. This is a reminder of impermanence, right? So they aren't so attached to the kind of status or position, but recognizing that it is the greatness of the Dharma that is really what is being sort of honored in there being such a throne. And so when it comes to those both who are listening to or who are giving an explanation of the Dharma, this is something that should be done in a respectful way, having gotten rid of that kind of sense of arrogance, and also we often see this sort of habit of doing that finger snap before getting on the throne in order to really remind the person who is going to be teaching of impermanence. And then next we have the third kind of cause for the accumulation of wisdom. And that comes with the fourth line of 265 that says, and offer the Dharma to others. So here we should offer the Dharma to anyone who is seeking that, whether it is through texts or teachings or creating the kinds of conditions for teachings to occur, because we shouldn't look at someone and think, you know, oh, that's not a good person. I don't think I want to teach them the Dharma. I think I want to kick them out of my Dharma teaching, sort of looking at them as if they're just bad and they're going to remain bad. Rather, we should have this attitude that everyone has the possibility of improving, right? And if they listen to the Dharma, if they encounter the Dharma, that possibility is increased and enhanced, rather than thinking like, I don't really like that person. I don't want them listening to the Dharma. We should have this attitude that every being has the potential for growth and change. And so at this time, it is so rare for the Buddha to have come into the world. It is rare to have the Buddha's teachings remain. And we should see the opportunity, any opportunity to engage with the teachings and to give those to others as something important, and trying to help create the conditions for that, for whoever might be interested in the Dharma, without our sort of biases of like, it's not a good person, or I don't really want to help them. This is something that we should really keep in mind. And then here, where it continues into verse 266, we are going to be reading the first two lines of those. And the first line is the fourth of these 25 things that says, have supreme, 266, the first line, where it says, do not revel in worldly discourse. So here, when it comes to engaging in kind of worldly discourse, this is something that we shouldn't get so caught up in, things that are, say, harmful to others or sort of neutral, like they don't have any help or harm to others, but they're sort of useless or purposeless kinds of talk and engagement. And often our talk with others will turn to pointing out the faults of others, right? We kind of like to look at others and point out their faults or look at how bad they are. But as Joel Atisha has reminded us, don't think about the faults of others, but rather look at your own faults, right? When we engage in such worldly kind of discourse, particularly when it is directed at maybe nitpicking others or in a way enhancing our afflictive emotions, this becomes an obstacle to the Dharma. Right? If we are just proliferating our afflictions and not looking at our own faults, that's something that really we shouldn't kind of revel in or spend our time enjoying. That is something that becomes an obstacle to the Dharma. And then fifth, here we have in the second line of 266, take delight in the transcendent. So here, those things that are transcendent or that help us to pass beyond the world, things like impermanence and selflessness, love, compassion, bodhicitta, when we encounter those in the world, we should feel a kind of, we should revel in them, we should enjoy them. It doesn't need to be just in the context of someone giving a Dharma teaching. These kinds of ideas, this kind of sentiment, or there can be reminders of these things in various aspects of our life, not just in the formal kind of context of teaching, but can come up in conversation. And so having a kind of joy in that, or things like renunciation and moving beyond the kind of attachments to the world, however we might encounter that kind of idea, we should delight in it.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a net there. Toujours revenant in Basolka, Agicapshadoa. Tala Chidar Teshendo, Tala Chidar Teshendo, Shanla Yunde Keber, Dusidwa, O de Carsigorsna, Tala Ya Chu Tuba, Tamutu, Tene Samuta, Tene Yanda Yando Kumdiche, Tinashi, Mishandala, Tende Yonga Kugabchis, Yonga Chisgora, Tala Chidar Teshendo, Shanla Yunde Keber, Duse, Tala Tuba, the Sambata. Kumbe yonde ne kebar cheba teshendo ane teshendo shenda la ya ane ko tebe kugab yonga tabshi chegure samlu ta ya da kumbe yonga tabshi che chele juwe ke rogwa che kuyara o ti kuyara o teshendo shenda la ya yonde de kebar jose tebe kugab yonga jose samlu ta ya kugab yonga jo ko che kebar sambu ke tab jose tabshi chegure sungara Tenashi, and Tumbatel Cardos. Sembe Church, Mengumshes. The church to all Tanga Chokajenso, degree some church in Mombachi Juamare, Tanghoms, Tandix, some Juamare. Kachayena Tavacha, Kachayena Kachambuto Hamaguna Chigny, Poruja Hakondura. Tambune the house, Kugiamara, the Yen and Hakondura. Tindus Sanje Sunguda, two churn in Yambarchas. Tuzil churn Yan Abuade Sungura. Oh, Jitan Legada Chauroko. Tim Tijanjan go Mago, Kuka Yutuneko, Kadu in a Chunyango Esura. The Sembe Church in Mengumshens. Tan degree Mambunyes, some tendency of mature Mobama Mavasha with Esura. Sembe Church in Mobama. Gava the Carson Wilson, Turn Song said. Tebe Roa, Tebe Tuneswa, Tebe Tundati, New News and all that Tundati, some Nyaya Sungura. Mambusha, Atakarshan, some Mambusha and Hamago membership. Oh, Tanyam Butiridos, Tindere, Tundati, Tashe, the Kesha, Tundati, Redosum, similar Sungur, Esgora. Tebe Tuneswa, Suru Searches Sungura. Oh. Taganashi number Yawadas, all title Madras and Yawadas, Tindoa, Tambashidua, the Kunjo Sumdoa, Chu, Sanjichu, or Titi Redoa, some Tisos Hako, Chewara. Number Yawacha would S, Shimachodas. Anekarchawras, number Yawada. Shubadela Nekardos and the Sholga to the Gedi Gudua. Lamatala, Yampiwa, Tado. Kubar Zado Susa, and it should get the Tunji should have get in the Yena, Kura Tunji Tesia Pugresura. Jim Mejitika Soda, Bambo Tendeki Pugmar, Soso Kangayana, should have Puga, Nunuchi Tagasi, Commodus needs between a tin de Giora. Oh, Tiachi Shanda Pugdunga, Kanga Pugresam, Tendeko Mare, Lamala Koshidaki, Tinsadi in the church and get up to Chumarachine, Sosumichigra. Shida Madi, Shida Yomara, Kalasa, the Tinidura, Shida Kangeke Yomara. Then Shanda Sobat and Tindichugunaniami, Tinjikura, Shanda Madam, Michi Soyala, Keko Mara, Tindetirisha. Lama Dala Yampua, Tato, Kuban Jadus, Kushapchura, Chushangere, Chu Manganyangiore, Chutanda Kala Manga Jaguare, Payabore, Tampanzingiore, Pendo Chigure, and Kushapchura, or Shura. Oh, Tiba to Chilamna, to get butter, Sholga.
So, beginning with the second half of 266, it says, just as you develop good qualities in yourself, develop them also in others. So, just as we want to develop in ourselves the kind of conditions to be able to hear the Dharma, to contemplate its meaning, to meditate on it, we should try to create the kinds of conditions for others to be able to hear the Dharma, contemplate on the Dharma, meditate on its meaning. Just in the same way that we want to develop those sorts of qualities, we should make an effort to help others develop those qualities within themselves. And then in the first line of 267, it says, do not be satisfied with the Dharma you have heard. So we should have a kind of insatiable drive to hear more Dharma. However many times we might hear something that is going to give us additional insight, additional clarity. We shouldn't think like, oh, I've heard this before, I already know this. The first time of hearing something, we aren't going to know it completely. We hear it again and again, and our the understanding of that meaning gets deeper. It gets it's not just like worldly things where it's kind of like knowing facts. We can't just sort of dismiss it as like, oh, I've already heard this, I already know this. But rather, when it comes to the Dharma, we should have this kind of insatiability, not ever being satisfied with the Dharma that we have heard. And that's the seventh of these 25. And then the eighth comes in the first half of the second line of 267, where it says, keep in mind its meaning. So when we have listened to the Dharma, we should have a sort of understanding of its summary. Like, what is the point of this? What is the meaning of this? What's the kind of essential point that is being made with this? We shouldn't just sort of listen and not be processing, not be having a kind of understanding of what's the main meaning of what we are hearing. And so too, it continues in that line saying, and analyze it. We shouldn't just sort of hold it at face value, but rather engage in investigation and analysis of these things. We should have an understanding. Well, what are the Four Noble Truths? What are the Three Jewels? What are the differences between them? What does it mean to have renunciation and so forth? We need to analyze and examine the various things that we hear. And then 10th comes in the second half of verse 267, where it says, always respectfully offer a gift of thanksgiving to your gurus. So in particular, if your teachers or your gurus are in need of kind of good conducive conditions to be able to continue to teach and practice, we can offer even just a small amount. It's not saying that you need to sort of bankrupt yourself. And in particular, if it's just a single teacher, it's not so difficult to provide for the needs of a single person. I mean, if it's a center or it's other things, that's a little bit different. But making the kind of conditions, conducive conditions for someone who is making effort at studying, upholding, teaching the Dharma, this too is another cause for the accumulation of wisdom.
Oh, yeah, take this one. Lama Dala Yepe was a Tado of Kubera. Jado Soli Sheba or she did this one. That's Chuchiba Teresha. Jide Jambe La Mendoza etera. Jide Jambe La Mendoza. Jambeba Kawangashi Yomare Satara. Ele Jumbe to the Kayomare. Sendi Chipu Tewachuna did it. Sendi Khan Debate. Khan Debate Chawarmato. Senda Tinga Kasichilasa Kasa. Kote Shenge to which Tewachima Chichi Taga Shagor, Tum Shagors, Konzataga Shagors, Jambe Bagda. Tumji Shagor. Kasa. Ore teach Shanadi Meta. The Michi Jambe Bagshagora. Oh, teach Shabato Chachima, Chile, Jum de Yorset, Temba Maraconza Tagas and Gogodan Shagor, Sigora. Send the Chibu Karikana teachers, Shanda Kake Sam Mato Sigora. The teacher, Penandiri Casa, Samu Mantu Kansas, Koran Namizu Lapsi Chaviora, Mando Tebasogi, Mabu Shengesogi, Nide Labguris, Samu Mantu Kama, Teta Changi Chedasos, Le Chumbe or Changa Jursi, Changi Tum Nashiris, could Changi Tum says she shadow. Could Changi Sunder, Simjanga Kamba, sheet in the Shingi Chambo Surgeon, they could do Skabja Say Kabja, Shemekil Saja, and the Shina come to get Soshare, Michiko Tanjuchan, Taco Pesa that the Sayato Mabuku Sara, and Chen any Mezula Avo Tenea, Changu Chambo Shivojan Rossos, Miss Sayarishas, they Niagadus. Cherazo Gangataga shots and Cotedo, all one did Chambo Shivichin. 어째 다천정 알이야 사회 통해서 망치 키심 내내 따대고 천정가 칠로시다 마돌라서 섭소지였어. 내가 사회의 망타줄래 에네 거 사라디 디나실에서 좀 코란서 사회 통해 고셔. 뒤에다라 치치고 년고 말해서 랍게어라. 그 디나실에 가서라. 야 도친도 생각하냐. 장비 수업했는데 장비 받은 게만 빼 고체들을 장장 삼루타에 대대 망부 셰네 텐주 빼 망부 있어요. 다 된사 라야메도 와 라우메도 와 대마디라 지연에 단에 거토들도 야우로 거게 거가를 삼구도 다네. 다 된사 텐주 라비요 말에. 생계만 텐주 망부도 와 로 망부 롭죠 지에도가 거라져 tinde야. 어디 이거 tin데 장비베 텐주도 시다 만들어서다. 이라 Jide Jangbe so Mendoza. Oh, Jide Jangbe so Jetenju tenju mende dese ishige soje parjedo yuwe te ishige sosaye parjedo ko karishe mahimba janshere shira pendo yobane keshe mars ti shira mande te de jambe tenju mabu sarang go ko tende chendi kanja tonda tende chawrse shege sara lobju mabu che sara ta teng sa ti meb chara ene chungni bad kardosna zebe tenje ngaje pang sadere ti karsore zeba lolang be tenje ngaje pang bata zeba lolang sade ngazebena zeba yora chichi kaba yora oti zeba lolo zeba janja pojo de chi lawde member soya da ti janja tonda chi zo che de yaw mare sera zeba lolang mare zeba goya goyore pojo de karishegdo hako ashe ne tel sujo de karishegdo hako ashe tin de shegore tin de mare de shegore te lojo je de na hako goyore te samle shaje mare zeba lolo zeba zo mare zo zene tonda ngoye ne su de se ane te so samla kar babna ane te so che jamle che te mado zeba janja zo de pojo de kaka so che tende che janja tonda mare se tange mane ne 자가도 내 치료받아 나뭐 잡아 마무쳐라 땜바 견도 주세 팜수나 남바 팜수나 치바데 팜수나 남바 치고 같은데 땜바 견도 주니 줘야들 텐데 요라 티세니 야가 쳐보라 마도 센텐산의 시카스래 추주 파주 가르세 그래 디디라 캐라 맞아 드레드레스를 세부셔지 티마르 드레 임베 주세들 파주 추주 가르 주세 셴네 셰요구라 티 하고다니 야고요라 대점 말에서 저배 던다데 하고는 뭐에 대해서 심바체 냠리셔야 되는데 던다 템버셔 그래서 저배 롤링지요 말에서라 저배 던제 가제 방세 저배 롤랑배 던제 가제 방바다 순반에서 저배 롤리 저배 롤리 숨겨라 저배 장장 저는 직토되는 멜시에 좀 다가 리보신 게지 저바 장장전 퍼줘데 말에 저저들에 장장전 리보 장장 말에 남부에 던지 강가들이야 저바 요래 두발롤리 저어데 두발롤리 이셔라 터제 두발롤리 바스 남부에 던지데 두발롤리 이셔라 터제 두발 내요 저데 동해 바셔라 카셰 내요 전에 베자사베셔라 내요 저데 카셰 저바는 저 세나 되고요 말에 추기 추진 세월에 추박해 우리 들에서 내요 저대 동해바 남배대 동해바 바디에서 내요 말에 저와다 말이셔라 대저기 캐주셔도 진리시죠 가자 저배 가게 봐체 더랑게 연데 맹아셔셔더라 랑게 연대 명아시 랑게 연대라 명아시 니거래 랑게 연대라 명아시 메트로바다스 랑게 연대데 샬리아 오가 지지 신기 마마지 내 야부치 캐나 지지에서 떡배 연도도 근데 제 쇼마라 소소 연대 연나 소소 삼르타테르마도 연도도 제세네 이게 오마래 도에나셔네 타촌베이나 가 타촌베이서 랍초요 마래 딜람나 아니 메시게 켈론시게 딜랍스나 샨다도 콜 통첨부시게 나를 통민도 삼제는 가 타촌베이 내시지 제시시냐가 고쳐요라 대선자 타촌 때문에 동지시 타촌베이나 거나 타촌에서 시달러요 말 딜람나니 샨다게 가 딜라고 사람마다 요즘말 삼제 에는 가시 뭐시면은 뭐시연도도 또 보면은 또 보연도도 셔는 골치요라 어쩌자 들으시죠 말이죠. 거기서 윤대 명아시 메트로바 다시 어디부터 찔렀네요. 나게 윤대 뭐시 메트로시. 달라 윤대 제발저시. 윤대 연어 소소 마가시나 딱 말해서 메가지 등산간지 계시더라. 셴 메가시나 고 윤대 라고 말했대. 괜찮지 랍샤그라. 어떤데 시기요 말 소소 메가시나야 잘 그런 주 단지게 연나티 연대 여바데 연대 라고레서 장보 라고레서 야 어디부터 질람나 두주리고 봐도
Oh yeah. So here, then beginning with the first line of 268 here, it says, do not study profane philosophical systems such as that of the Charvakas. So here we call them like the Charvakas or the hedonists, a school that doesn't believe in cause and effect or past and future lives. They're sort of just like, enjoy yourself in the here and now. And they would say, like, for example, that the Buddhist teachings on karma are something that are just made up in order to scare people. So they give this little story of like someone who like is in a community and in a forest, and they come and they call everyone together and they're like, here, look, there are these really sort of big footprints. It looks like the footprints of a really big wolf. And so I don't think you all should go out very much. I think you need to give me your food and your drink in order to stay safe from this creature. And in reality, there is no thing, but they're sort of taking advantage of those people. And so in the same way, the Charvakas or the hedonists would accuse the Buddhists of just sort of making these things up in order to scare people. But there aren't actually karma, cause and effect, and so forth. And so here, a lot of the texts of that school are actually not available to us anymore. They were destroyed or they have been lost and so forth. But here, the kind of idea is these are texts of some groups that are teaching that, you know what, there's no benefit of really thinking about the future. Just be in the here and now, just do what you want to do, enjoy yourself, and so forth. And there's a lot of real harm that can come from such texts. So one shouldn't sort of venerate them, obviously, or even recite them. This can be something that becomes an obstacle to the accumulation of merit. And then the 12th of these 25 things then comes in the next line where it says, give up debate that is for the sake of arrogance. So here, just engaging in debate just to debate others is something that should be given up. So debating out of a kind of pride or an arrogance, there is a benefit that can come from debate, but just engaging in debate alone is something that is to be avoided. There is sort of a way of saying this, that in general, we like, you know, listening to the teachings is something that is beneficial, but to do that solely without doing anything else, or to only engage in debate without doing anything else, just for the sake of debate, that's not going to be particularly beneficial. Rather, we need to use debate as something that increases our understanding. Oh, this is how it is. This isn't how it is. And when you have come to some kind of conclusion, some sort of determination, then you needed to engage in practice. So here, rather than you know, just engaging in debate for the sake of debate. And here there is a long tradition in the past of engaging in debates between Buddhists and non-Buddhists. You know, today it's often just amongst themselves. But in older times, the stakes were really high. Like if you were to lose your debate, all of your texts would sort of be tossed out and you would have to convert and so forth. But it's not as though, you know, maybe the stakes are quite as high today. However, we shouldn't just do listening or just do debating, but really it's mainly we use those as tools to then be able to go and practice the things that we know. And then next, we have in the next line, do not speak in praise of your own good qualities, and the line following, but rather speak of even your enemies' good qualities. So here, we shouldn't go around sort of boasting or speaking of our own qualities, and this is the 13th out of these 25. We shouldn't proclaim them sort of everywhere we go. It's actually said that in the Vinaya text that even if one is an arhat, you don't get to go around saying that you are an arhat. That might convince other people like, wow, they get treated really special because they're an arhat. You know what? I'm going to lie and say that I'm an arhat so I can get those kinds of benefits as well. So even if one has sorts of realizations or qualities, you shouldn't go around like pretending like, oh, I have the clairvoyances, or oh, I have this and that. Even if you should have such qualities, it isn't something that you should go around proclaiming to others. And so too, when it comes comes to your enemies, but rather speak even of your enemies' good qualities. Especially these days, if there is someone that we don't like, it's almost impossible for us to express anything good about them, right? We look at them and we see, oh, they're just all bad. And we can't, even when there is something good about them, actually proclaim that. But rather than that, as one of the kinds of causes for increasing our collection of wisdom, we should be willing to see the good qualities even in those that we don't like or consider to be our enemies.
Oh yeah, that is just us. What is thing?
So we are out of time for today, so we will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe. Thank you for sharing your joy and teaching the Dharma, especially in these days of miracles. And Katrina, thank you for your translations. We'll finish with some dedications now.
May the spiritual teachings lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the Venerable spiritual mentors be faithful, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of love sun's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. To this merit may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Oh yeah, good. Oh yeah, that's it.
Junja Jema Jayon.
Oh yeah.
Record.